Hey, hey, what is happening? What is happening? Good morning. Good morning. This guy right here, I'm Dale Maxwell. Where are you? What are you watching? Why are you here? This is the Kickassery Show. What the hell is Kickassery? Kickassery is where you get to listen to me talk to amazing, amazing freaking people. This started out as me just kind of talking to the influencers in my life, and it's grown from there. But I also have to be very honest that this is a little selfish for me because this has also given me the opportunity to connect with people I grew up with or I've connected throughout my travels throughout the US and the world. And to be honest with you, this has actually been as good or better for me than anyone else because I get to sit here and just BS and talk to and reconnect with incredible people. The incredible person that we have today was my neighbor growing up. This kid was just such a pain in my butt growing up, but him and his brother I loved to death. We did some incredible, insane shenanigans growing up, and I don't know, maybe some of those will come up, maybe some of them won't. But if you guys have watched Kickassery at all, especially when I have people that I grew up with or people that really mean a lot, there's a little bit of reminiscing, but then there's a lot of nuggets that we get out of this. So who do I have on with me today? Let me unmute this guy. Give you guys all a heads up. I'm also the producer here. So if you see me doing wacky stuff and not paying attention, that's because I'm doing my job. So this guy right here, Raymond freaking England, good morning. How the hell are you doing, man?
Good morning. I'm great.
All right. All right, dude. Who are you? What do you do? Where do you come from? Tell us a few things about you.
Well, I've been kicking ass since 1984. Homeschooled, born in I think it was a 76 Brown Nova on the Big Flat, which those of you from Idaho or Salmon will know where that is. And then I've been kicking ass with Dale Maxwell from way back in the day. We lived a little bit higher up on the hill, and we bugged each other all the time. And anyways, from there, I found food because I'm a fatty. And I went this from, gardening with grandma, raised in the 4-H, which Dale and his mother, Claudia, kind of orchestrated. And from there, I had no idea that it was going to lead to becoming a chef and traveling the country and the world and living all over.
Okay, so I got it. Okay, so guys, I gotta break this down for a second. I talk a lot about my hometown, and I talk a lot about how remote it is and how small it is. And so you have Salmon, and then you have North Fork, where Raymond and I are from. So you have Salmon that's super isolated. There's maybe 2,000, 3,000 people that live in Salmon. And then you drive another 20 some miles north up into the mountains even further, and then you have where we grew up. You know, I I didn't move. I didn't meet Raymond until I was probably 9 because we lived on a ranch. I love the birds at your house. That is so awesome. Um, so I lived on a ranch, and then when I was 8-ish, 9-ish, we sold it and we moved 2 miles down the road, and I became Raymond's neighbor. And I was okay. So Raymond has an older brother, Lewis. So I was 2 years older than Lewis, and then Lewis is what, about 2 years older than you, ish?
Yeah, 20.
Yeah. Okay, ish. Okay. So that was, and so it was great. I mean, dude, we motorbiked together and bicycled together, and we terrorized the neighbors together. And I mean, it was incredible. So now, fast forward umpteen number of years, I connect with Raymond again through this amazing thing called social media. We connect the other, oh, I don't know, about what, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. I don't remember what it was. We jump on the phone, and it had been, what, 14, 15 years since we had talked to each other last.
Yeah,
and
it's
it
been a
was,
while. It's been like I'd run into your mom and I'd say, "Man, tell Dale I said hi," and that was about it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because my mom was the postmaster for years and years and years in our little North Fork. So of course she was the social hub.
Yeah.
But and so then guys, I'm sitting there talking to Raymond. I'm like, oh man, how you doing? I knew that you had been a chef. I knew that you had traveled to Alaska. I knew you had been a snowboard bum for a little bit. But then he tells me his career and what he's accomplished and what he's done. And I'm like, dude, that is insanely awesome. So you're not just a run of the mill chef. You are like, and I'm saying this, you can say it, I don't give a crap. You know, you're the legit like top level stuff, man.
Well, thank you.
So
Appreciate that.
this is your opportunity to say yes, yes I am.
Yes, yes, I am. Thanks. Kicking ass, Dale. Thanks.
He's kicking some names
Yeah.
and taking some
I
ass.
like to be modest about it, but yeah.
You don't have to right now. This is your platform to do that. Okay, so you've bounced all over the place, right? But you were in California for the majority of your career.
Yeah. Yep.
Ish.
Yeah. About 10 years. We lived in California, and we gave San Francisco a shot for 1 year of that, but mostly Los Angeles, which is crazy. I never thought I'd live in Los Angeles. I even told my wife, I said, no way. When I flew there to interview, we actually lived in a, which you can't get really.
Okay, say that. You goofed up. The video got wonky. Say that one more time.
Oh, sorry. So we were in Alaska actually when we decided to move to LA, which is kind of like crazy opposites. And I even told her, I was like, "There's no way we'll move to LA. No way." And I flew down and I interviewed for the job. You know, LA is actually kind of cool. And then I got the job, and 10 years later we were still there. So it's kind of crazy how life can work.
So I was giving him crap the other night when we were on the phone. I was like, yeah, I've just been waiting because we watch a lot of like Chopped and stuff like that. You know, Beat Bobby Flay on the Food Network channel, and I've always been in the back of my mind. I'm like, I'm just waiting to see Raymond on there. I'm waiting to see Ray just walk on thing. I'll be like, yeah. So I was giving him crap about that the other day, and you've actually had that opportunity.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to go on to Chopped. So I worked for Tom Colicchio, who is the chief or the of creators. And
say all that one more time. Say that one more time.
So I worked for Tom Colicchio, and you know, he's the bald guy on Top Chef. You probably won't like me saying that, but he is. And so he's the guy that I worked for the majority of my time. And so we filmed several Top Chefs there, and I was on a few episodes. And when you work for Tom, you can't go on Top Chef. Not that I ever would want to. It's not really my thing going on a televised kind of competition. I mean, to me, life is competitive enough. And, you know, I'm not in it for the fame necessarily. I never was. I do understand, like, the financial benefits of, like, winning something like that is great. And, like, times I've seen guys blow it up and they be ready for it. I'm still getting ready, I guess.
There you go. There you go. So one of these days we may see you on there. Just stroll right on, kick some ass, and okay.
Who knows? Who knows?
Okay.
Who knows? But I couldn't go on Top Chef for, I think it's like I don't know, 3-4 years or something. If you work for Tom, you can't go on there. He has had people that have came onto his show, but I think they staged or something. They never actually technically worked for him. So if you've ever been like a management role with him, you could never really go on Top Chef unless it went on for like another 4 years or something, which miraculously it has. It's been on TV for like 14 seasons or something crazy. I don't know.
It's incredible. So what is it like? What is it like working in that environment? Okay, for what it's worth, you chefs work insane hours and under insane pressures, and you guys are masochists. I've come to the conclusion. So what's it like to work at that level with someone that has that notoriety? And what did you do for him? What was your...
Well, so I was hired on as just a sous chef, which is kind of like the lowest of the management in the kitchen, but you're still salary management. You're the grunt. And that job, I was somehow the chef. And if you told me that on my first day there, moving from Alaska, I would have said you're crazy. That's impossible. There's no way that's going to happen. And it's just kind of weird how the cards played out. And when I actually moved to San Francisco in that first 4 years. So it was actually only like two and a half, 3 years that I worked there. And one of the guys that I worked with, he was taking over as the chef. Asked me to move back because he loved working with me, which was, I was extremely flattered. And I said, sure. So we moved back to LA. We liked it better. It was warmer than San Francisco, a little bit safer too, not as city-like as San Francisco. It's like really packed in. And from there, he got another opportunity like 1 year later. And so he jumped on that opportunity, and there you go. I'm next in line. And, Tom gives me a call and is like, so you want the job? And sure. So I took it, and then I ran it for another, however many years, 3 years
Nice.
or so. And that's kind of how I got into that situation, which I never thought possible. And it definitely is stressful working for somebody like that. It's, you're dealing with a lot of high-end people, but then they're just people. So we were, where the restaurant was right next to the CAA building, which is Creative Artist Agency. And I think they're the largest talent agency in the world. And they did have Tom's contract originally, and then I think he switched over to WMA. But we had, Jennifer Aniston to, whoever, you name them.
Wow.
Alphabetical order of pretty much every celebrity in there. And not that it, at first you're like, oh, wow, that's really cool. It's, that's awesome. But then after a while you realize they're just people too. They're no different than you and I. And at that point, then it's just kind of like, everyone's, when they're like, oh, VIP's in here. I'm like, everybody's a VIP. You know what I mean? Especially nowadays, anybody can Yelp, and everybody's got a review, and everybody has an opinion, and nobody's is worth necessarily more than someone else. I mean, you even see it in like food critics and stuff of like, in a way, what they say is devalued just with the internet and how reviews work nowadays. So, but yeah, that's kind of how it was.
So in your industry now, with Yelp and everything else that's so huge and social media, I guess, like you just said, the critics can be, whatever, but do you see me as an individual having such a big voice, or could have that opportunity to have that big voice? Is that good for the industry? Is that bad for the industry? Do you see it, compared to 10 years ago, is the industry in a better place because of that?
It's kind of like the Emeril Lagasse syndrome. So Emeril really like blew up TV with his BAM and his like, his over the top kind of personality, and he got people thinking about chefs kind of differently. Really, Jacques Pepin was the original with like Julia Child, but that was more of like educational, and they were kind of your typical stereotype of like what they're French or they're, Emeril was just so open, and it totally changed kind of how people look at chefs. And now everyone has a voice and an opinion, and Top Chef kind of did the same thing, kind of blew it up. And kind of my roundabout story here, how I bring it back together, is Emeril, a lot of people are like, oh man, he's, distorting what chefs are and changing how people view the industry. But in a way, that's a good thing. Without that, I probably wouldn't have the job that I have. Dining out probably wouldn't be as popular as it is in the States. And we would probably look at restaurants as a whole completely different. If there wasn't that person like Emeril that came about and kind of created this whole thing, and Top Chef and all these shows now where there's kind of some notoriety behind the position, because before it wasn't. I mean, being a chef wasn't, you know, one of those jobs at all. And I think, you know, the reviewing and the critics and like the Yelp and thing, it's changed it as well. You know, it's given people a voice. And I mean, they have, you know, Yelp elite clubs of people that just go out and try to eat as many places as possible. And it almost turns competitive. So I think it's definitely been a benefit because it's kept eating out popular, and but at the same time, it definitely has its side effects for sure.
Right.
You know,
Right.
no model's perfect. So.
Right. You know, and it's okay. So I have two questions. One, I'm still trying to figure out how to get the title of chef. Do you have to go to culinary school, or because now I'm watching a lot of these TV shows that you're talking about, and I'm looking at them. I'm like, okay, but now they're calling 10 years ago on these same shows, if someone was a home cook or wasn't a culinary artist, they were called a cook. And now I'm watching these shows, and now everyone's a chef.
Well, again, it's just a bastardization. To be a chef, you actually need to be a chief. It really means. And, you know, some people might be like, oh, I'm a chef. And it's like, really, what are you a chef of? Like yourself and your little home kitchen? Because you're not a chef. You know, like at Kraft, I had, you know, 30 plus people just in the kitchen. But I'm also a manager of the restaurant. And so I had like almost 80 people underneath, you know, that I had to manage. Then you're a chef because you're the chief. You're the person they looked, you know, but not to say that you can't be a chef of 3 or 4 people in a small kitchen. I've seen that too. But to be a real chef, you're the leader in your kitchen. If you're the only person in your kitchen, I guess you're still a chef, but yeah.
So it doesn't mean that it's your level of abilities or your culinary knowledge or anything like that. It's just you're in charge. You are the ultimate. Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
And a lot of times people become the chef way before they should. And that's kind of what I said about the TV show of why I've never gone on it. I never wanted to put myself in that situation of like, you know, I wasn't ready and I made a fool of myself. And I never really had any desire to become famous with it either. But it's the same thing being thrown and you really see what you're made of. So a lot of times people they try to become the chef way too soon, and it's like, slow down, learn your role. You know, the more Ken Korn that worked at the Shady Nook that I worked for a long time, you know, my favorite quotes he said is, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. And so with experience comes, you know, humbleness.
Yeah. And good on you, man. Good on you, because there's not a lot of people out there that would look at the opportunities that you had and be like, let me put the brakes on. You know, most of us, and I'd probably be in the same boat. Most of us would be like, oh, hell yeah, let's do this, man. And good point. Very valid point. So you and I were talking before we went live about the restaurant industry, and I'm a study of business. I love business. I love the beer industry. I love watching the restaurant industry, but I'm definitely an outsider. I've never really worked in the industry other than the Norfolk store, but I cleaned everybody's stuff. I didn't work in the kitchen. So, but it's interesting to me because if you look statistically, like we were talking about, in business, one of the highest, if not the highest, fail rate of any business demographic is restaurants.
Yeah.
And it's usually within the 6 month to 28 month. You know, very few restaurants make it to the 3-year mark. Very, very few. And so now that you've been in it, and you've been at what I'm assuming every level of restaurant business. I'm sure you've been at the small town like there in Salmon all the way up to holy shit level, you know.
Yeah.
What's your views on that? Why do you feel that there is such a high failure rate in the industry?
Well, it's heavily romanticized. So people always have the idea of thinking, oh, it would be awesome to own our own restaurant, and like, you know, oh, so and so, my husband makes the best French toast, the best burger, or whatever, and you might think it's great, but you have so many emotions and kind of nostalgia kind of attached to certain things that you think it's the best. And then when you put it out for everyone else to judge, it's not the best. And that there's people romanticize the industry, and they want to own a little restaurant or a little cafe or a bar or whatever it is, and they don't realize that it's more about the business and marketing than it is really about how good your food is. That's important too. I think that's why it's an extremely hard industry. It's because you have to have all of those things. You have to have the marketing, the business plan, the budget, and you also have to be good. And it's hard to hit all of those marks because you can't be just good. Where I think there's other industries that can make it based on, maybe they don't need, or, maybe it's just marketing and their products are meh, but it's something that you really need. It might be a car dealership, and it's about, the location, which is also important for restaurants. But I think there's other industries that can slide by, with just marketing and location. The service doesn't have to be there. The quality necessarily doesn't always have to be there.
I think he just got a phone call. That's all good. He'll be back on in a second. But, he makes a valid point. And I look at restaurants in that context is, I've seen a lot of people, I've seen a lot of restaurants that there he is, he's back now, that they think, well, I'm a great cook, so I'm going to go start a restaurant. They think, yeah, this is something I can do. And then they're like, you got a phone call.
I lost you for a bit.
Did you get a phone call?
No, I had some sort of weird pop-up thing, and I don't know why. And I went to hit it out, and went berserk. So I'm not the most tech-savvy, but we're back.
That's all right. Morning, Bill. This dude, Raymond, you would love Bill. Bill is this guy, I'm telling you, he struck out and has done something that's super unique. He's a gunsmith, and he's going through a master's gunsmith program, and he's doing it as a truncated. So Bill, super, super impressed with him. And you would love Summer. So she's part of the Chaffin clan. We grew up with the Chaffins.
No, I remember Chaffin.
Okay, you just went all garbly on us. Say that one more time.
Yeah, I remember Summer Chaffin.
Yeah. So, but anyway, what we were just talking about was, the industry, and I was telling you also, when we lived in Oklahoma, there was a restaurant that we were only there for 3 years, and that restaurant changed hands 3 times in those 3 years, and by the time we left, it was closed down and vacant. One of those restaurants only lasted about 6 months. And shoot, you can't even set your menu and whatnot in 6 months a lot of times. So it's interesting as an Uber driver. I pick up a lot of managers between shifts that are going around, and it's interesting talking to a lot of them here in Dayton, Ohio, which is now in a rebuilding phase. Dayton used to be just like the happening place about 10, 12 years ago. The market dropped, GM pulled out, so they had a huge exodus of jobs. And so Dayton's in a rebuilding phase, kind of like what Boise was in the 90s, just this rebuilding phase. And so they're getting more restaurants in, they're getting more clubs in and bars and whatnot. And it's interesting listening to the managers and the staff on listening to a lot of these owners who aren't restaurateurs. They just had some extra money and they wanted their own bar so they could go drink in it, or they wanted their own restaurant so that they could take their friends out.
Yeah.
And these managers that know what the hell they're doing, I can just feel the aggravation from them, because these owners are owner operators, but they don't know how to operate. And the manager's hands are completely tied. They can't make it run the way it's supposed to. And I feel for them.
Yeah.
I feel for them. So what do you do when you're in a situation, and this goes beyond the restaurant industry, but Raymond, what do you do when you're a manager, a chef, or someone, but you have an owner or a upper management that's just being a pain in the ass? How do you navigate that?
Well, I've dealt with it before, and yeah, I mean that's a lot of problems stem from the owner, and they have the monarchs, and kind of like where I was saying, where it's romanticized, and it's the idea of owning a restaurant sounds great, but then when they see how much it costs and what your labor is and your food costs and everything, and how much they're actually making, or if they're making money at all, if you're lucky, and a lot of places don't make money in the first year. It costs money to stay open and keep your doors open for the first year or 2 years, and then you and restaurants are funny because I've seen success stories where people make a lot of money, tons of money, and they do great and they crush it. And they've crushed it for a long time. The guy I worked for in Alaska, he had a restaurant called the Double Muskie, and that place crushed. And it's been going since I think the 60s or something, mid 60s. And his parents had it, and he took it over. And it's incredible. So I've seen success stories. You see, far less of them compared to the fail of restaurants. But as far as dealing with crazy owners, I don't want to call anyone out, but
No,
yeah,
no, of course not.
I've definitely dealt with that. Even just moving here, one of my good friends, one of the guys that hired me actually at Kraft, opened a restaurant here, and he was one of the owners, and then his owner, or whatever, the majority guy, the money guy, couldn't make up his mind what he wanted necessarily, and it was just, it turns into a tough situation. It was an $8 million build out. This wasn't your like little mom and pop cafe. It was actually 3 restaurants in one giant building, and it was a huge project. It was extremely ambitious, but there wasn't the patience.
Yeah.
He just didn't have the patience to stick with it, and it's still sort of there right now. Everyone that put all on it, the main guy with the money just didn't have the patience, and you couldn't put up with him. So here we are. I moved on.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
sometimes you have to.
Amen. Yeah, you have to. You have to be aware enough to know when it makes sense and when it doesn't make sense. Because I'll be honest with you, I've stuck with projects either for myself or for someone else. I stuck with it way longer than I should have stuck with it out of loyalty or
sure.
just.
I think how we were raised. Your mom didn't raise a quitter.
No, well, and so maybe I need to have a conversation with her then. But but I'll tell you what, man, we've got a guy on that's with us, Mr. Kirk Chester. He's been on the show. You guys, if you haven't seen Kirk's video with me, you got to jump over and watch it. This is a guy you want to talk about, not a quitter, man. Kirk his story is phenomenal, and he's in my opinion, he may disagree with me, but in my opinion, he's at the top of his game right now, and he's crushing it as well. And brother, what I'm seeing, and I've been around the block a little bit. I've maybe not have traveled as much as you, but I've seen a few things now. And since I've started this show, what I'm noticing is a lot of us small town kids who grew up in Salmon, and I'm using Salmon as a great example, is that we have authors, we have top level chefs, we have super successful insurance people, we have global travelers, we have environmental people. Dude, as I'm taking stock of the kids that came out of where we grew up, it's incredible. I was just on the phone with a buddy of mine last night that graduated from Salmon. He's a freaking astrophysicist. Right? And so it's so incredible to me to see because you hear small town, blah, 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 drugs and this and no education, no this, no that. You know what? Okay, whatever. But those things I'm getting on my soapbox. Those things don't define who Raymond England is, because guess what? Raymond England is freaking crushing it as a top level chef, and he could have been on TV and blah 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 blah. Right? Right?
Yeah.
You and
Yeah.
I, growing up, would have never considered that.
No.
And I'm not downplaying you, dude. You were always super smart. And you were always super intelligent. But I mean, really, when we were running around on our motorbikes or up snowboarding with Chester, or out throwing dirt clods at each other because we thought it was fun, did we ever consider that you would have been in Alaska as a chef?
No, or LA or Charleston, South Carolina, or yeah.
Right. But
No, it's
dude,
pretty wild.
you have just kept at it, and you've kept busting your ass, and you've just been working your tail off to get where you're at. And man, I am so ridiculously proud of you, man. You are incredible. Truly and
Appreciate it.
honestly. Truly and honestly. So with all that said, can you believe we've already chewed up a half an hour?
That's wild.
Done. I mean, so let me ask you this. Okay, so you've been around the block, and whether it's in your industry or not, but let's talk about the food industry.
Sure.
I drive around a lot of young people when I'm Ubering, and I ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up? I'm still working on that. They're like, well, I want to be a chef. I'm like, okay, are you willing to put in the stupid hours to get there? But if you had, what is your pieces of advice for those out there that are either young and they want to get in the industry, or even if they're old like me and they want a career change? What are some of your points? What are some advice that you have for them?
Initially, I honestly try and discourage people because it is a really tough industry, and it's like, it's got the high failure rate for the restaurants, but it also has a high rate of divorce and separation, and it's really hard to maintain a relationship. And thankfully, I have a very understanding wife, at least so far, and we've been married since 2009, sorry, and so we're going on 10 years. You there?
Damn you, technology! All right. Hopefully,
I'm still here. I can.
We'll pull him out. Hopefully, he'll come back to us. Gotta love technology, guys. Yeah, you know what? He was talking about the separation rate and the divorce rate. You look at any industry that people have to be married to their job because of the time, because of whatever it is. You can hear him? Let's try this again. Maybe that was on my end. Let's try this again.
All right, I'm back. It's weird. I was there. You were there, but apparently I wasn't.
My end might have goofed up. Sorry.
All good.
It's all good. Okay, so anyway, you were saying that you have a very remind me. Everybody else already heard it.
Yeah,
I want to hear it.
You asked me, what does somebody young that wants, they say, hey, I want to be a chef, and discourage them. No, you don't. You really don't want to be. If you want a relationship with anybody besides yourself or your kitchen family, and you really do. I spend more time in the kitchen with that family than I do my actual family, and I let them know that, and it's important. That's why it's important to have the right people around you at your work environment. But I try to discourage them, and that sounds crazy, but the thing is people tried to discourage me with it. I kept with it was because people tried to discourage me and say, look, and if you really want it, you'll go out and get it, and You'll do it. And if you're not in it 100%, and someone discourages you and says whatever, and if you're not 100%, then you shouldn't be doing it. You really shouldn't. Go find something else to do. And it sounds harsh, but it's true. It's like you have to in order to keep doing it, because the pay isn't great for a long time. I mean, I do well now, but it took a long time, of making nothing. I started at $5 an hour at the Shady Nook, and I was in it for six years, and then I was only making $9 an hour, and then I was in it for another That was 17. No, let's see, how old am I? Can't do the math. I mean, 18 years. I think it was like 18 years ago, or 17 years ago that I started at the Shady Nook, and now I'm actually doing okay. But it takes a long time to finally start making money. Where, there's a lot of different crafts and trades. Welding. If it's about money for you, this isn't. If it's about money or fame, I would discourage you from this. From going to be a chef. If you want to go learn how to cook for a few years, it's a benefit that we could all use, and that's kind of how I looked at it in the beginning of like, well, this is a skill that I can use forever, whether I'm doing something else professionally or not. And then for some reason I just stuck with it for this long, and that's what I do now. But, it's funny, like, colleges too, people in our society now, it's like you have to go to college, or you won't be, successful, which just isn't true. A lot of kids go to college because that's the thing everyone tells them they have to do, and they major in something that they're sort of into or whatever, but then they don't have a job when they get out, and then they're massively in debt and unemployed, and they're in a terrible situation. And my dad's actually working with the Salmon High School on this a little bit and encouraging to bring back some of the metal shops and wood shops and saying, look, you're telling everyone that they can be anything they want. And in a way they can, but it's just not true. Not everyone's going to become everything they want. And we still need welders and woodworkers and, those skilled trades that you can go to welding school and you have a job right out of it. You're not in debt. You have an $80,000 plus a year job right out of school, and you have no debt. Like, that sounds pretty awesome. You're 19 years old and you're making 80 grand, opposed to, you're 24, 25, getting out of college, and you're $150,000 to $200,000 in debt, and you're unemployed.
Yep. Yep.
And it's just kind of interesting.
Well, and yeah, you're absolutely right. I've had lots of conversations, and once again, as an Uber driver, I have a lot of these conversations with young people, college people, the whole nine yards. And, I remember a really good friend of mine down in Boise, her son was not college. He's just not college material, and that's okay. It's not that he's dumb. It's not that he's not intelligent. No, smart kid. It's just that college was not going to be his thing. So he went and did lineman school over in Cuna, went to be a lineman. It's like a 8-month, 10-month course, came out making ridiculous money. Is it a very dangerous job? Sure it is. That's why you get paid very well. Welders, is it a dangerous job? Sure it is. That's why you get paid very well. But it's not something that you have to do your entire life.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of our life, and especially in today's day and age, is that most businesses don't expect you anymore to be with them 30 years. Would they love that? Absolutely. But it's not like it was for our parents' generations, where it's you get a job, you work at that a job for 30 plus years, you get your pension, and then you live out your retirement. That's not today's market. Are there people doing that? Absolutely. I'm not saying it's impossible. Government jobs, big corporate jobs. If you play the game and you love it, do it. And Raymond, I'm going to leave you with this. This is just me. One of the things I've been preaching a lot, because I've pulled this down from some way more intelligent people than myself, is that life is about enjoying. And Simon Sinek, this is your why guy, his whole thing in life is just enjoying your job, because we spend the majority of our breathing adult lives at our work. And I do not understand. Now, I don't understand having a career that you hate, you despise, you can't stand Monday. You have the Monday blues, hump day, you look forward to Friday to get out of work because then it's your time. I don't get that. I've never understood that. Even before I had the awareness of that, I couldn't stand that, even in high school and everything else. And that's why I bounced between a lot of jobs. And like you were touching on what you were saying is that so many times people go to college because they're looking for a dollar amount. I get it. I get it. But then they put themselves into a scenario, into a career that there is no love. There's no enjoyment. And then they bring that lack of enjoyment home, which then feeds into their relationships, that feeds into their children, blah, 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 blah. And it drives me batshit nuts. It absolutely does. And it's sad. So Bill is here. What does Bill have? School isn't for everyone. You don't need to be a highly educated to be happy and successful. Find what you like and maybe live and pursue it. Amen. You know, not everyone's passions are income generating opportunities for them specifically. And that's okay. You know, but anyway, that's my soapbox for the moment. Brother, I'm going to wrap this up with us. Is there any last piece of golden nugget you want to throw out to folks?
Yeah, kind of back on when you said, you know, what do you say to somebody when they say, I want to become a chef? And just kind of one other thought you were just bringing up is like test the waters. Before you spend money on culinary school, look, some of the best chefs that I've ever worked with, I went to culinary school in Portland, and it certainly was a benefit. I learned a lot, learned a ton, it opened a lot of doors. And so it worked out for me. However, I worked for some great chefs, and I've worked with some other great chefs and cooks that have worked for me that have never gone to school. And I would say if it's something you're interested in, you don't have to go to school. Not that I'm discouraging you from, you know, going to culinary school, but go test the waters at a restaurant. Go peel some carrots for 4 hours or whatever, and just watch and absorb by watching and learning. And you'll know if that's for you.
Yep, absolutely. I love it. And that's in a lot of, I mean, you're absolutely right. And go down to the local coffee shop, the cafe, go work at Denny's for some night shifts. Go, you know, I'm one last touch on that is driving around high school kids or talking to high school kids. They're like, well, I want to get this job because it's going to be fabulous and it's going to be wonderful. And, you know, they're looking at they're only looking at the silver lining, you know, and I'm like, okay, you're right. But what about the shit side of the job? I don't care where you're at. I don't care what you're doing. Even if you have a job that you absolutely adore, you still have to do some shit work, either to get there or, you know, you're going to have to clean some toilets. You're going to have to dig some ditches. You're going to have to do something in the meantime.
I still wash dishes when I have to. When there's no dishwasher. That's me.
Yep, absolutely. You know, and I encourage people, just go get a shit job for a while. Because if nothing else, two things. If nothing else is, A, you're going to earn some money and you're going to earn it. And two, you're going to learn that you don't want to do that. That's pretty valuable. Yeah. Like you just said it, is go test the waters. If you love it, be dumb like Raymond and just continue on and be amazing. Or you're going to find out, nope, this isn't my thing, and move on and, you know, whatever. Here you go. Kirk, this is not even pun intended because his dad is a plumber. So, you know, he had a shit job. Plumbing isn't for him. So with that, guys.
You were kind of breaking up.
Oh, sorry. Kirk Chester, he had a shit job. Plumbing wasn't for him.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
All right, guys. Raymond, thank you so much. I appreciate you. That you are amazing. You're incredible. I appreciate you. Thank you for taking some time and just sharing with us. I appreciate it, man. So say your byes. I'm going to kick you off of here.
Bye, everybody.
Stay on because you and I are going to chat for a few minutes. So everybody, Raymond, thanks, boss.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Man, that bird is so loud. Let's mute him. Okay, guys, how incredible was that? We had this kid that I grew up with in just out in the sagebrush kind of a deal, and he's accomplished so much. Happily married, found himself a gal that really supports what he does, because like he said, is that when you're in an industry, whether it's military, restaurant, anything where your family is more at the workplace than at home, That's hard. That's so hard. I live in the military community, folks. I get it. I know it. So yeah, wow. Thanks. You guys definitely need to hook up with Raymond because he's got some really, really cool stuff. So with all that said, tomorrow we have a recap show. I'm going to kind of regale a little bit about my nuggets that I pulled out from today. And also, don't forget, we also have the Kickassery Influencer Scavenger Hunt going on right now. I have a couple extra letters to read tomorrow. I'm super excited for that. So with all that said, guys, have a rock star kind of day. Go out and smile at somebody because you never know, they might need it. All right, guys, I'll talk to you soon.